You live in memory of the lonesome time. I can't stop loving you. I can't stop loving. Everybody wants to be able to sing like Ray Charles.
Georgia, Georgia.
Just an old sweet song keeps Georgia on my mind.
I said, Georgia, Georgia, now, baby.
Yeah, Georgia.
Well, no, please, I find.
He has a distinctive thing in his voice. And it's like he's got an old set of tubes in there somewhere. You know, one of those tubes like on the fritz, just about to crap out. But it makes for a great sound. It expresses a lot of things. There's pain, it expresses happiness, experience, soul, blues, joy. It's just, he could do so many things with that sound.
I mean, they didn't call him the high priest for nothing.
I said, Georgia. And a song for you. Come back, sweet and clear. The moonlight through the night.
He didn't write it. Others have recorded it. But Georgia belongs to Ray Charles.
I'm calling my Georgia.
The mournful expressiveness of his voice opens a window into the human heart. It is the sound of soul, a cosmic howl that cuts through emotional calluses like a hot knife through butter.
Georgia on my mind.
A sound nurtured in the blues and gospel-soaked soil of the Deep South, and deepened by his own reservoirs of pain and loneliness. Reservoirs filled to overflowing when he was a barefoot little boy in rural Florida. Ray Charles' full name is Ray Charles Robinson. He was born in 1930 in Albany, Georgia, but he grew up during the Depression in the small northern Florida town called Greensville. His dad, Bailey, drove steel spikes along the 70-mile stretch of railroad from Perry, Florida to Adel, Georgia. He was seldom around. Ray's mother, Aretha, took in laundry to make ends meet. At a time when everybody was scuffling to make it, Aretha and Ray couldn't afford the R in poor. They were po. But if music was gold, Ray would have been rich because it was all around him. Ray lived next door to Wiley Pittman's general store, where the sounds of the jukebox and Mr. Pittman's piano lit a fire under his little tail.
And he was the guy that, started me and showing me little things at a time, how to take one thing and then how to take the other thing and what to do and how to make sound of it. And it was so impressive to me, especially just to mash a key and hear a sound. Wow!
He's calling me, he's calling me, God's calling me, he's calling me.
And of course, there was church.
I was raised in Baptist church. We went to all the revival meetings during the week when they had them, and every Sunday you went and you stayed all day listening to gospel music. They had drawing powers. In other words, I couldn't stay away from it.
But for all the pleasure he derived from music, in Ray's life, sorrow was joy's constant companion. When he was 5, Ray watched his little brother George drown while playing in the laundry tub. Not long after, Ray began to go blind. By the time he was 7, Ray was in total darkness. It was his mother's insistence on being independent that got Ray through.
See, I used to do almost everything any other kid did. I used to wash dishes, scrub the floors, cut wood with an axe. My mom would always tell me, well, you know, son, one of these days I'm not going to be with you. You know, I'm going to die or something. And you're going to have to learn how to do things for yourself.
For Ray, the hardest part of going blind was having to leave his mother to go 150 miles away to St. Augustine's School for the Deaf and Blind. In his young heart, that was disaster. That first year was a lonely one. Retha couldn't afford the train fare home, so Ray spent Christmas alone at school. He took refuge in music. The musical menu at St. Augustine's was heavy on Bach, Mozart, and the sedate little ditties that Ray played for the local ladies' socials. But whenever the teachers were out of earshot, Ray played the music he heard on the jukebox back home.
When I say I'm yours forever, every word I say is true. Won't you buzz me, baby? I'll be waiting for your call. If you forgot the number, come on over. You won't have to call at all.
This was the music that fired Ray's soul. Music that made you want to shake a tail feather. It expressed the emotional hunger, down-home humor, and day-to-day realities of ordinary folks.
Please Tom on the phone sometime.
I'm sorry to my heart. So long.
In the spring of '45, sorrow came knocking again. Ray's mother died. It was so sudden he had no chance to say goodbye. Losing his mother was the greatest tragedy of his life, far worse than going blind. He was 14. Within a year, Ray's father would be dead too.
Without a father, without a mother, without a sister, or a brother, I'm what they call all to myself alone.
You've lost everything now. You're completely lost as a child in a wilderness, and it's the thunder and the lightning, and you don't know what to do with yourself. And the blues is the blues, baby.
He lived a hard life. Old cars that break down on the road. Backdoor meals at white eateries. Payless gigs, bad pianos, and the relentless competition of other musicians. When the popular bandleader Lucky Millinder came to town, Ray auditioned for him. Ray was hot stuff among the local musicians, but Millinder told him he wasn't good enough for the big time. Ray was crushed. After 2 years scrambling round Florida, Ray headed for Seattle, where the burgeoning black music scene looked promising. It was as far away from Florida as he could get.
I was new in town. I didn't know anybody. And, when you walk into new territory, you pay attention. At least that's the way it was when I was coming up. Maybe it's a little different nowadays.
Ray paid lots of attention to the vibrant jazz scene as a composer and arranger. It was their mutual love of jazz that brought Ray and the 15-year-old Quincy Jones together. Ray became Quincy's musical mentor.
I loved him because he wanted to know how to do something with music. And of course, I'm only 17, and I was very happy to show anybody anything that I knew. I didn't think I knew that much, but if somebody came along and wanted to find out the little bit that I did know.
We all thought he was a big deal at that time, and all I wanted to do was tell everybody in the world how soulful Ray Charles was.
In my mind, I sort of adopted him like for my brother, and I really mean that. So It's true, you can use the word friendship, but it goes a bit deeper than that as far as I'm concerned. He's really like my brother. I mean, that's the way I sort of took it.
Quite so true. Yeah.
I remember Ray said one time, because I used to get real bugged playing shottishes and polkas, and he said, every music has its soul, and if you really are sincere and surrender to it and explore it, it's all soulful.
When I was in Seattle, the main thing I enjoyed doing was playing the music.
Come home to every night that fine.
With his buddy Garcia McKee on guitar and Milt Garrett on bass, Ray formed the McSun Trio, playing gigs all around Seattle. Their popularity led to Ray's dream come true, a record deal with Jack Lauderdale's Downbeat label.
Ray was finally making a name for himself, but he did it sounding like somebody else.
Now you call it madness.
He had role models. He sounded like his peers. There was Nat Cole, and there was Charles Brown.
Well, I'm 50 and I'm 15. Like a ship out on the sea. I can dip and drift now.
And depending on what context Ray was working in, he sounded amazingly like each one of these.
She gives you a call. Don't hesitate. You're in for a break. Cause Jack, she's on the ball.
Well, all of a sudden, I start thinking that, wow, that's good because that's what I want to do, but it's not, I don't hear my name. It's always, you sound just like, and which is what I want to do, but I must get out and find out whether I can make it with my own voice, with my own way of playing. And I was scared to do that.
I heard Baby Let Me Hold Your Hand by Ray Charles on the Swingtime label. I said, oh my God, I wish we could have an artist like that. I mean, this artist is so soulful, so good. I think he's better than Charles Brown.
Baby, let me hold your hand.
So we bought his contract for $3,000.
Do something. I just can't think of it.
Just anything. The first session we made with him, we were trying to make a hit. Now, that really did not come off that well. We hadn't really understood Ray Charles. When we really hit it is when we left him alone, and he'd gotten some musicians of his own. We started to record what really is a true Ray Charles feel.
But Ray had captured the music of church. Ray just flat out took church and put it in music.
There is no way that you can listen to music and feel that kind of spirit that surges in your body and it don't leave an impression upon you. So naturally, when folks say that I have this gospel, well, it's kind of obvious.
My friend, when all friends are gone, nobody but you. I do mean you, talking about you. The gospel tune that it came from was floating around New Orleans and was being played on the radio. And I think that was called Talking About Jesus or something, but Ray took this thing and made this one of his real hip arrangements and just put Ray's stamp of approval on it, and when he's through with it, it ain't no more their song.
Who is my friend? When all friends are gone, nobody but you, yeah. I'm doing you. Who is my friend? When all friends are gone, nobody but you. Oh, who is my friend now? When all friends are gone, who always defend me if I'm right or wrong. Nobody but you.
Some people felt that I was being sacrilegious or something. You know, I got a few bad letters and stuff. But what they didn't realize is that this was just the way that was just me. It was just normal. That's just the way I sang. That was the way I played the piano. Everything was natural, and I still do that today. You know, sometimes
Ray was talking about
Sometimes you know
a load of suffering, a load of release, and the release of church was there, even though it wasn't in the words. It was there in the music.
because it's all right. I say it's all right. That's because I got a woman way over town. Good to me. Yes, I have. I got a woman way over town. Good to me. I know. Give me money. I'm in need. Give me time, God.
The criticism, of course, has now turned to praise, because he developed a whole genre of rhythm and blues music based on gospel changes.
This marriage of the sacred with the secular was called soul music, and Ray Charles was the high priest of soul. I Got a Woman was the catalyst, his first big hit in 1954. Ray's popularity spread like a firestorm to America's black community, from the urban theaters in the north to the Chitlin circuit down south.
Hey, y'all, tell everybody, Ray Charles in town. I got $1.25 and I'm just ran the clown. But don't let no female play me cheap. I got 56 more than I'm gonna keep. And I'm gonna let the good time roll tonight. I don't think y'all know what I'm talking about. I don't care if you're your old man. Get yourself together and let the good time roll.
If Ray Charles had not recorded another note, his string of hits from I Got a Woman to What I Say established him in American musical history as the inventor of modern soul music.
That's what I'm looking for.
This is Jazz USA.
As always, Ray defied categories. His was the only R&B band to play straight-ahead jazz, and they played it with Ray's special brand of soul, adding raw emotion to the intellectual coolness of the post-bop generation. Ray Charles brought jazz and rhythm and blues fans together for the first time. His rendition of What I Say turned the Newport Jazz Festival on its ear.
Mama, don't you treat me wrong. Come and love me, daddy, all night long. I know it's all right now. See the girl with the diamond ring. She knows how to shake that thing.
What I Say was banned by several record stations for being sexually suggestive. But fans triumphed over Moralizers, making it his first million seller.
This was an era where they wanted to kind of sanitize rock and roll a little bit. And they wanted nice, clean, the Pat Boone, the Frankie Avalon, let's sanitize it. Let's not get the girls a little too excited. Ray's voice coming out on the radio. Baby, what I say was this kind of wild voice that you hadn't heard in a long time.
And now his screaming minions included white teenagers, too.
He sure had an inkling that something was going to happen, some kind of revolutionary explosion of music, which is what it was, because it affected, a whole generation of players out there. So many musicians cut their IP from What I Say.
Finally, at 29, Ray hit the big time. He moved from dance halls to concert halls, bought a new Cadillac every year, and a private plane.
Girl, say you give your hand to me. You didn't say goodbye to me. Right and I watch you walk away. Oh, beside the lucky God. Oh, I know you never know how the world who loves you so. Tell me now, you don't know me. No, baby, let me say that you don't know me. No.
I remember when I began working with him, I was, all enthusiasm, and I thought, gee, I'm controlling these interviews, and it's this wonderful. And we're about to take a long airplane ride together, and I was going to be right next to him on the seat. We're flying first class, and I forgot we're going from LA to New York. So 4.5 or 5 hours of me and Ray Charles alone on this plane where I could just talk and hear him and tape and get all kinds of great material. And we got on the plane, and he took his seat and put on his seatbelt, and I turned to him and I said, okay, man, let's talk. And he looked at me and he said, I wouldn't talk to my mama now if she came out of the grave.
Was I gay?
And I thought, damn, I better leave him alone. And that was it for 5 hours. I didn't hear a peep at him.
Now she's gone, and when
His moods are dark. You don't want to be in the same room with him. He ain't in a good mood. He don't want to talk to you. He wants to be left alone, but you're there because you have a job to do and you try to get out of his way. It's uncomfortable.
Do you think you're a difficult man to work for? Because you're very perfectionist. You mentioned this yourself.
Well, I don't think I'm a difficult. There may be some people who would say that.
Some of the guys that's been in the band for years, some very learned musicians, whenever Ray's in the room, they kind of tense up, and start making mistakes. And the first mistake they make, that's an E flat, not an E natural, So you can't make mistakes around Ray Charles.
He's a very quiet man, basically. But when it comes to music, he's like a general.
Time. Have you ever dug Ray Charles play a song? I call it a death tempo. It's so slow, like he used to sing "Drowning My Own Tears," like It brings the tears, and now that is slow, my man.
work to my when I began.
Ray plays the blues slower than anybody in the world. Slow. He says, one. And then I walked over by where George Duvivier was standing with the bass, about a mile away, something like that. And but when I got over there, I heard him say 2, but that was the slowest count. Every move that man makes on stage is a signal for something. He directs the band with his feet, with his head. When he does this, he's keeping time. Oh, let me say, or I'll sit and cry.
Ray's gone through a lot of drummers, and he'll tell the drummer, he'll say, honey, look at my feet.
I wouldn't play drums for him for love nor money. No.
It's very, very important to Ray for a drummer to keep time.
Class. Now, see, if a drummer can't understand that, like, you're in worse of trouble.
Hold it. Slow. Drummer, can you keep time? If he hadn't been blind, I probably would have dropped my trumpet on his head or something like that. And I don't wanna be all alone.
He wanted to have some background singers, and we didn't have any other background singers. We were actually the first Raelettes. But the next thing I know, I looked up and we had 4 girl singers there. He ran across, it was a group called The Cookies.
Well, he used them as almost like horns, almost, and like gospel singers, like a choir. He would answer him, they had the tight harmony, and it was like they were like very mournful and soulful behind him. They would never overbalance him, but it was very tight and right up under him, answering him.
Sometimes when I hear you sing this song, it makes me
to be a 17-year-old, getting ready to be 18, going on a national tour in a private plane with Ray Charles, one of the greatest entertainers in the world, you couldn't have asked for anything better than that. Your gowns and your clothes had to be perfect. Your makeup had to be cool. I mean, you had to be cutie pie. You had to be gorgeous, and you had to smell good. I mean, it was a privilege to be a Raelette. Oh, you had to be a little diva, honey.
Just for you, I'm gonna give that you have a love that's all in you.
He was rough on me. I would be singing the song the way I wanted to sing it. The harmony of it, that's not the way you say it. That's wrong. That's wrong. I said,
Tell the world about you. Tell the world about you.
Now that Ray controlled his own sound, his next move put him firmly in charge of his career. He left Atlantic Records in 1959. His success had propelled Atlantic's rise to the top R&B label in the country.
There's gonna be a change in me. It was a great blow to lose Ray Charles because he was so identified with our label.
It's almost as though the day he left us, after he finished the Genius album, he switched gears and went to a totally other kind of music and almost never reverted back, damn near didn't revert back, to the sound that he cultivated from 1954 on.
It's prophetic that the last song he recorded for us was an R&B version of an old country classic, I'm Moving On. So I guess he was moving on.
From time to time, but you just wouldn't listen up, baby, no minds up, folks.
That tune was prophetic in more ways than one. It signaled a change in Ray's music that alienated some of his fans, but brought millions more into the fold.
He was signed by ABC in November 1959, and they introduced me to him saying that I would be his A&R producer. And one day he called and he said he wanted to make a country and western album. Well, my first reaction was, what is he doing? But that lasted about 8 minutes because I realized that he knew what he was doing.
Sid was telling me that he didn't think that was the right context for him to be in, and he shouldn't try to record country and western tunes. And And I remember Ray telling him exactly to go in the booth and sit down.
But when I announced it to the executives, to the president, the vice president, they thought he was nuts.
Long gone, and now I'm lonesome blue.
I only know I can't forget
Every Saturday night, that was when I was a kid, that was the one night my mom would let me stay up late to listen to the Grand Ole Opry, and I liked that. Might seem strange to some people for me to like it, but I truly have to tell you, I do love it.
Hey, good looking. What you got cooking?
I saw country music leaping about 50 years forward because of the impact that Ray Charles was going to have on the industry, because he was so well known outside the country music industry, and now he was going to be well known inside because he had done the impossible. He had crossed over the other way.
Rhythm and blues singers singing country western music. This was like revolutionary. So all of a sudden, I got country western music. Now I get it. Because before the guy was singing, I can't stop loving you. I made up my mind to live in my. Then you hear Ray do it. Like, I can't stop loving you. Wow, now I get it. I got it. There's soul in this.
But I made up my mind. Yes, I have to live in memory. All alone sometimes. Sing this song, children. Sing it. That's all right. It's useless to say. So I'll just live my life in dreams of yesterday.
I Can't Stop Loving You became one of the greatest country hits of all time, selling more than 2.5 million copies. At ABC, he had negotiated for himself one of the best royalty deals of his time, a deal that included ownership of his master recordings. Ray owned the equity of his own creations. As the cash poured in, Ray set up his empire, headquartered in Los Angeles in a custom-built office building, complete with his own recording studio. He started a record label and management company, and he moved his family into a contemporary dream house in Baldwin Hills, the Beverly Hills of Black LA. He formed the big band he'd always dreamt of and bought a bigger plane, a 40-seater. Ray was flying high. And he was doing it at a killer pace, just like the days on the Chitlin circuit, but now he was bigger, moving faster, flying higher. He required more and more fuel to keep going.
You know I worked so hard all day long. Everything I try to do seems to always turn out wrong. That's why I want to stop by on my way home and say,
Ray was busted 3 times for drug possession. Twice the charges were dropped.
I wanted to belong. I wanted to be with the cats, whatever they did. So I got started on this long road, and it went on for about 15 to 16 years or so.
Man, I tell you, it was serious. He was, my father was on heroin. He was a wild man. I mean, he was jumping about this high off the ground.
I don't know how I survived. I really don't. I think I was among maybe a few extremely lucky people who might have just barely squeezed through by the skin of one's teeth.
Don't let the sun catch you crying. Crying at my front door.
His addiction didn't affect his work, but it sometimes wrought havoc at home.
That is done turned something.
I was only 4 or 5 years old. I wanted to go kiss my dad goodnight. And my father was, I knew he was in there. He was bumping around. And when I knocked on the door was a little bit open. And I saw some blood. And I opened the door, and there was blood everywhere. And my father was, I don't know if he realized what he had done to himself. Being a child, I just started yelling for my mother. Dad's bleeding, come upstairs. And she came upstairs, and then they rushed me out of there.
Don't let the sun catch you lying.
He would die.
Lying
He was bleeding to death. He was bleeding to death, and he was probably so high that my father didn't even know he had cut himself.
You done your daddy dirty. I tell you, he just don't want you no more. Let me say now. You know you done me dirty, little girl. And I sure don't. I said I sure don't. I sure don't.
In November 1964, Ray was caught at the Boston airport with heroin and marijuana. Faced with a stiff jail term, Ray checked himself into a hospital to kick the habit. He left the road for a year.
When he stopped touring and wanted to go cure himself, it was a very weird time, for him. I think that was the only time I've ever seen my father vulnerable, where he really looked. When I would visit him, he really wasn't the same. He wasn't. It wasn't like he felt like he was on the top. Because it was just very quiet, just deep thought most of the time. Nobody really knows what he was thinking.
That's my road. Don't come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. Don't come back no more. Hit the road, Jack. Don't come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. Don't come back no more.
Say what?
Don't you come back no more.
Something wrong here.
Don't you come back.
Maybe I don't speak the English too well. What you mean by
don't you come back.
After all I sacrificed,
don't you come back.
After all you put me through,
don't you come back.
You gonna tell me
don't you come back.
Something wrong?
Don't you come back.
I mean, what about all that talk about until death do us part? Don't that count for nothing? I mean, how can you keep saying that?
Don't you come back.
Wait a minute, you're making me mad here now.
Don't you come back.
See, I don't think you know who you're talking to.
Don't you come back.
I don't have to take that kind of talk from nobody.
Don't you come back.
Say what?
Don't you come back.
Yeah, I know it's your house, but still, there's no reason you keep telling me that.
When he's not on the road, he's in his studio, engineering his own recordings. Music is his life.
My ears are my eyes. If I lose that, I don't know. I mean, that would be like dying, I think. Because I would be in a world of total darkness and emptiness. Sighted people always think it's fascinating what blind people can do, and it's not fascinating at all. It's a very, it's just people come in my studio and they look at my console and they see all these LED lights, they're just flashing, and they wonder, how does he see all those lights? How does he know what they're doing? I don't care what they're doing, you see? The thing is that if my ears The music I hear that comes to my ears, if I don't hear any distortion, I know it's right. I don't. So you see, it's a way. It's just that if you want to do something, you can make yourself about as independent as you want to be, but you must have the will. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're blind or not. I've known some people that have all five senses, and they're pretty pathetic to me.
Yeah, you said that right.
My mom, she instilled in me to try to be as independent as possible, because her thing was, even people who love you, they won't always have time to deal with you when you may need a person to do something. So you better learn how to do as much for yourself as you can, and I have trained myself to do that. Can't use that now.
He does everything. Nothing stops him from doing what he wants to do. I'll never forget, my father had a 63 Corvette, gorgeous car. I loved that car, and he was at an intersection, and he told the valet, I want to drive my car home. And the guy said, Mr. Charles, you know, this is an intersection. He said, who bought the car? He said, you, Mr. Charles. He said, well, then let me drive it. He said, okay. So my father gets in the driver's seat, and we're all in the house, right? And we hear this bam! Come out, Corvette's tore up. It's gone. The car is almost totaled out, right? Father jumps the clutch, pulls out the intersection, and just totals out the Corvette. So the police come, right? And they're talking to the valet. They're about to arrest him because he's saying, well, who's driving the car? Mr. Charles. And they're already saying, now look, you know, we're going to arrest you if you don't stop lying on this poor blind man. You can't. Why would you do that to that poor man? He said, man, look, I'm telling you, Mr. Charles is driving the car. And they're about to handcuff him, and my father finally told him I was driving the car. He's never scared of anything.
Raised a man of many facets. I play chess. That's the game I love. You can wake me up at night for that.
You can't beat me. He doesn't like to lose. It's you can tell by the anguish on his face that he didn't enjoy that at all. And, of course, neither do I. Last night, after we got through rehearsing, we went over to his room, to Ray's room, and we played chess. Well, he won. But the next time we're going to turn the lights on. So tonight when we play, is it okay with maybe just a flashlight over in the corner, maybe a candle in the kitchen, anything? Just some semblance of some brightness somewhere.
Sweet song. Keep Georgia on my oh, my I wanna know, baby, just how you feel, girl. Said I wanna know if what you feel is real, girl.
Though he hasn't produced a top 10 hit since Crying Time in 1966, Ray continues to get high visibility and to make money hand over fist in his collaborations with Quincy Jones and in commercials requiring his special brand of humor. There's not a soul in the United States who hasn't seen or heard.
You got the right one, baby. There's a choice we're making. We're saving all lives.
If you want to touch people's emotions, call Ray. His voice has become an American icon, spanning generations and musical styles. Ray Charles has become a national treasure.
I've had some wonderful things happen to me. I've talked to 3 presidents of the most powerful country in the world. Gee whiz, I play my music, and the people, they seem to be so happy. And I've been around for just about 40 years, doing exactly what I love doing.
The journey that began in rural Georgia has taken Ray Charles farther than he ever imagined. And there's no end in sight.
I got to tell y'all the truth. This morning when I woke up, the first thing I said, Lord, can you do this? Keep me singing. Lord, keep me singing. Keep a little breath in my body. Oh, it's the only thing I can do. Lord, keep me singing. I want to keep singing. What I want to know is my candy. Hit a Jordan, yeah. Oh, Georgia. And it's all of you. Comes that sweet and clear as moonlight through the pines. Here now, oh, my Georgia, my Georgia. And I no peace of mind. It's this old sweet song, man. It's an old sweet song. Keeps Georgia on my mind. Our people, the little girls on my mind. Ain't she?